How concerned are you about this turning into a recession?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you. So, as I always say, and with all of these, you can never make too much of one data point, one quarter, et cetera. Although you say you were surprised, I wasn't surprised. We all knew. I talked to many CEOs last quarter. They were bulking up on inventory last quarter. So we all expected this quarter would be a bit slower. And again, even if that weren't the case, I don't think one quarter makes a trend. If you look at small business starts, they're higher than ever. Wages are up. You talk to CEOs about their businesses. The economy is resilient and growing. So at this point, obviously, you don't want to see this. It's disappointing. You never want to see it. But we weren't surprised, and I don't think it's a trend.
What are businesses telling you, Secretary, about the consumer right now? This, of course, had a lot to do with our trade imbalance, not a lack of spending by consumers who seem to want to spend even in the face of rising inflation. What are you hearing from companies across the country right now?
Exactly what you say, which is, people are employed. Obviously, unemployment is at a historic low. Wages are up. People have money to spend. They want to spend. And obviously, inflation is a drag. People feel it. We know that. But if you look at the fundamentals of this economy, productivity, production, investment, wages, hiring, it's all strong and resilient.
Last time I spoke with you, we talked about the Innovation and Competition Act, Secretary. This has been in the works, in the air, on ice, if you will, for the better part of a year. It, of course, includes the CHIP Act, that $52 billion that would help to incentivize domestic chip making. Remarkable to actually see some progress, though, in the past 24 hours. The leadership in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, say that they have a timeline that they've agreed on. But so far, Secretary, they haven't even been able to name conferees to create a conference committee to hammer out differences between the House and the Senate version. If this is a national emergency, as you have suggested, the need to make chips here in the U.S., why is this so controversial? Why is it taking so long?
Yes. By the way, it is a national emergency. It's not just as I've said. Talk to the CEO of any national defense contractor. They'll tell you they need chips to make sophisticated weapons. Talk to the auto industry. They, are still furloughing workers because they don't have the chips to make cars. So this is not, you don't have to believe me, this is a national emergency. I wish I knew what it would take to get Congress to move more quickly and do its job, but I can tell you it's past time and they do need to do their job because the American people deserve to be safe. This is the single most important bill to bring down inflation in the long term, to fix our supply chains in the long term, and to create hundreds of thousands of high-paying American manufacturing jobs. So I will say I am optimistic. That they have appointed conferees. They did make this announcement yesterday. I am hearing more from senators on both sides of the aisle that they understand the urgency of this. So we just have to kick it into gear and get it over the finish line.
Do you have a timeline on this? I know you wanted this to be law by now, by spring. Do you see it happening this summer?
I do see it happening this summer. I don't think Congress can abdicate its duties and not do it this summer. We just can't wait. You have companies like Intel, for example, or Micron, good U.S. semiconductor companies. They are going to add facilities. They have to meet the demand. The question is, will they do it in the United States of America? Or will they do it in other countries which are giving them subsidies?
I wanted to ask you about that, but you testified to that extent yesterday, that other countries from Germany to Spain to China, of course, are wooing, was the word that you used, wooing these chip makers to set up shop in their countries. Is that actually something that you're concerned about, competing with other nations? Is that how this story ends if Congress does not pass this bill?
Absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind. The single biggest risk to delay is that these chip companies will expand in other countries, and they have to, right?
What are these other countries offering them, Secretary?
Money. Same thing that we want to offer them. Germany, Singapore, certainly China, France, Spain, all have subsidies on the table now. And if you're the CEO of a semiconductor company, you have to expand to meet the demand. you want to do it in the United States, but if Congress can't get its act together and pass this, they'll have no choice, right? If we're sitting here in the fall and this bill hasn't passed, those semiconductor companies will have no other choice. They will have to build overseas, and there is no reason for that. So I think the time is now, the consequences are real, and look no further than what's happening in Ukraine. Every piece of military equipment we are giving to the Ukrainians has hundreds, if not thousands, of chips in them, and we just cannot afford to play politics with this. It's time to get this done.
How concerned are you? You mentioned Ukraine, about Russia cutting off gas to some of our allies, including Poland, Secretary. It was a pretty bold move that we saw earlier this week. I wonder what the administration is doing to potentially prepare for other countries. For instance, if Germany was cut off by Russia, would we be prepared to replace that gas?
So, as you say, this is definitely an acceleration in the wrong direction, and not entirely surprising. And I know the administration and the national security team has been planning for this scenario, and it, is planning for every possible scenario.